Welcome to GROGTALK. I'm James.
I'm Dan.
And this is episode 3 where we're going to take Glades and Picksy through an adventure and give you a chance to experience first edition as it was played hopefully back in the 80s and how we've played it when we started again back a couple years ago.
It's about time. I'm ready.
Yes.
I'm ready to adventure.
That's right. So just a little kind of, for those who've not played first edition, I'm going to kind of discuss some terms that may come up and kind of the style that we're going to do. So just remember, Dan is the player, and he's going to control the player characters, and these are the characters that are under his control. And I am what's called the Dungeon Master, and you know that because I have an official Dungeon Master screen that is back in the day. And the idea is I'm the referee, and I'm the one who provides the framework for the storytelling. And so typically what would happen for those aspiring Dungeon Masters is the Dungeon Master lays out the scene, the player or players, in this case Dan with his 2 player characters, would describe what the players do, and then I would figure out what those actions do to the environment and then provide the response. And then it's a series of those steps that happen. So all the other characters that are seen or I describe that are not player characters are called non-player characters, NPC. So if you hear NPC or PC or you, you'll also hear you a lot of times, or maybe Dan says I, it may mean I, Dan, or I, his characters that he's running. In most adventures, the players only play 1 character, but in this case, to have more of a party, he's going to run 2 characters, which is also acceptable. So, Dan, you know, you're, it's, again, like we talked about, fairly new to say you've been a new DM for just a couple years since you started up again.
Yep.
So what is one of the biggest tips, you know, being that you're still a new DM, but you've now run for 2 years pretty much consistently, that when you started, what was things you would have liked to know now that you've started being a DM for a while?
Yeah, so I think that when I first started DMing about 2 years ago, it really bothered me if I didn't know about all the backstory and the connections. So I was running modules, right, pre-written adventures, and it bothered me if I didn't know all the backstory, all the connections, if there's too many gaps in the adventure. And I think now I realize a lot of the fun of DMing is to make those connections and to not be concerned about changing things up. You don't have to run these adventures as written. You want to make it a fun adventure. And I think another thing I've learned too is I remember some reference online to, I think, the rule of cool.
Yeah.
Which is that when you are dealing with a situation in a game, have that situation unfold in a way that's cool. Don't worry so much about things always having to be by the book. You know.
Are you feeling okay about saying that?
Yeah, because I think that it can be by the book to not be by the book, and I don't know if that would require an entire episode to discuss.
It's going to be a series, by the book, by not being by the book.
Exactly, right. So I think it can be by the book by not being by the book.
Okay.
But I think back then, if I'd known, look, you know, fill in gaps as you see fit, make changes, the rule of cool, I think that's the most important thing I've learned over the past close to 2 years.
Very good. And just one more thing before we start is, I think, Dan, I do share, we kind of prioritize the rules as written, where it's clear and explicit. We want to follow them. That's kind of first. The second, because the game doesn't devolve into a bunch of storytelling and creative writing the only reason it doesn't do that is only if you hold to the rules, or else it just becomes superheroes and everything else. And there's nothing wrong with that style of play, but that's not the way it appears in the book. And I think from our background, we played with people who just basically gave everything away, did whatever they wanted, and I always felt that wasn't the way to play. But there's going to be situations where you don't know, the rules are not clear, and then you're going to have to adjudicate based on the style of play. So hopefully this will give you a taste of what first edition is, and today we're going to just go over a little bit, play a little bit, and then kind of talk a little bit what it is, and then over the next series we're going to kind of delve into the 3 major areas that typically have an adventure. So the party gathers, and this is the introduction. Are you ready?
Yes, Pixie's ready, Glades ready.
Okay, so Pixie and Glades, after heading out from their homeland, after deciding that the painting and hunting was not their forte, they've struck out to adventure, and on their way to the major capital, they end up in a small hamlet in an inn, the Rusty Dagger Inn. It's themselves, with the bartender, Rufus, and it's near evening, and they're finishing their last pints. There's no one else in the bar except Rufus, who's wearily eyeing them, hoping that they will go retire to their bed that they've paid for. But Glades and Pixie are having a good time drinking and thinking of their next plans when the front door opens and a panicked, elderly, middle-aged man, very strong, walks in and says, "Someone must help me. My daughter is missing." He starts looking around, wild-eyed, looking for any help. He fixes them on the strangers, and he runs up to Pixie and Glades and says, "You must help me. My daughter is missing."
Glade says, "Dear sir, this is terrible news. What can you tell me about her? When did you last see her?"
"Oh, just this morning. She was doing her chores. I am John, the blacksmith.
Well,
And my daughter, Elissa, she was doing her chores, preparing for the morning supper. I heard a scream from the forest. I went out. I could not find her. Everyone in the hamlet has said, 'Oh, she is lost to wolves.' So I ran up here to the tavern, and I beseech you, please help me."
Can I talk off the
Sure.
record here for a second? So I think for me now, when I play these characters, what becomes important is to remember what their alignments are.
Right.
And if I recall correctly, Glade is chaotic good, has to be a good alignment.
Right.
Because Glade is a ranger, and Pixie, chaotic neutral. So Glade is going to be a little bit more of the good one, obviously. Pixie not so much. So, okay. So back into story. I just wanted to mention as I play these characters,
Right.
what's going through my mind.
And that's a good point. Unlike other systems, you don't have a detailed backstory. We come from the school, the adventure formulates the backstory, the circumstances, and that's why alignment is so important, because at least it starts framing what it is. And then during game, you're going to start figuring out what kind of personality they have.
So Glade says to John, the blacksmith, "We will of course investigate and do what we can to find
Elissa.
Elissa."
Yes, my daughter Elissa, she is such a beautiful thing. She's my only, after my wife passed, she's the only memory of her. It would be tragic. I would be lost. I could not live without her.
Pixie says, "Is there a reward?" And Glade immediately jabs with her elbow, into Pixie's side, and Pixie then sort of stops talking.
So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called a reaction roll based on Pixie's charisma. So, what is her charisma?
His. Remember,
I'm sorry, Pixie's
I
his.
know,
yes,
the names are terrible because Glade is a female. It seems like it should be opposite.
And I shouldn't just
Pixie's-
use the genders. I should just use their names. And
Thank
then I wouldn't
you.
have that problem. What is
Pixie's charisma is an 11,
Okay,
which sounds low, but it's
slightly above average.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's reaction rolls, and again, normally I would have a general sense of the higher charisma I have, the more likely the reaction of someone to what the person, the character is saying, will be favorable. So in this case, I rolled extremely high, and the fact that John is distressed, I said, "Oh, yes, whatever I have is yours if you bring her back alive."
Glade says, "Please do not worry about that now. What is most important is that we find Elissa." And Pixie gives sort of a scowl at Glade. And Glade says, "Yes, show us where you last heard her in the forest."
Oh, yes, of course. And so you follow John, runs, and you're able to keep up with him. It's about a 40-minute run back to his blacksmith shop, and he has a small shack of a domicile next to the blacksmith. And you notice that the blacksmith's area and the shack that he lives in is very close to the edge of the forest.
And what time was it? Did you tell me? Was it?
It's near evening.
Near evening.
So it's probably 4:30. Well, it's a little bit later. It's like 7:30 now.
Glade says to John, the blacksmith, why was she in the forest? Was she there doing some sort of chores, or is that where she was just heard?
No, she was picking fire for the morning supper.
Do you know where she would have been picking fire, or just somewhere in the forest here?
Well, so you see that at least right by the house, there's a path that's been worn from either Elissa or John collecting wood. He goes about 30 feet, and all I heard was the scream. John says the scream was from here, but it was somewhere, I don't know how far deep in. And while there may be a slight trail, it's not sure if that's the trail that if anyone went from that point.
Now, I'd like to go off the record for a second, because one of the things that I didn't mention to you, which I think is important, and we'll have to see how you as a DM play this, is
that you're a limner?
That I would want to spend some time first painting a miniature before.
Could you do an artist rendition of Elissa?
Right, exactly.
As a figurine.
Right, as she's being tortured and killed,
right.
I'm painting. Pixie's a magic user, a spellcaster.
Yes.
Pixie is supposed to memorize a spell.
That is
right?
correct.
And I did not tell you at the outset of this game what spells Pixie had memorized. This is very important.
And also Glades.
That's right, a cleric, right? Because that's right, we've got multi-class. I didn't tell you that.
Right.
So now this is where the player would sort of beg forgiveness from the DM, hope that the DM is a kind DM and say, what, can I tell you what spells I had memorized, or are you going to say, I didn't tell you, so I don't have them? This would be your call as a DM, right? And either way would be fairly legitimate, right?
No, I would say that you would, if we were planning, I would have asked you for memorization of spells. So you may pick, you may have one spell, or you have the spells that you would normally memorize. So I assume that would be sleep.
I think that's fair to say. I would have picked something different now, but that's only because I know the situation. So, and it would have been cure light wounds. Right. As the cleric.
You would have just been traveling. That's why you ended up at the tavern. So I'm assuming you would have kept traveling type spells to protect you from encounters. I'm assuming you're not carrying erase as your spell during travel.
Exactly. I would have.
Or read magic, or potentially spider climb, but that's unlikely.
That's what I would have wanted now. But okay. So, Glade says, "Fear not. I am sure Elissa will be back at home, safe, very soon." And Pixie is sort of looking around the shack to see if it looks like it's a shop of a blacksmith that is of any wealth.
Okay.
Or if it's just this guy doesn't have a lot of money.
Well, it is a hamlet. It is a small village of maybe under 100 folks. So it is a very crude blacksmith, but. Glades is not a. I'm sorry, Trixie is not.
Pixie.
Pixie. Why did I say Trixie? It's not a hooker. That's right. It's Pixie. I should write that down. Pixie. Pixie is not a blacksmith, so it doesn't look very impressive.
Pixie's not thrilled, but Glade dashes off to the trail, and Pixie rolls his eyes and follows. And Glade, as a ranger, right, we've talked about the different skills that the different classes have, and one of the most important of a ranger is the ability to track. So what Glade is going to do is Glade, while there's still some light, is going to search for tracks on the trail.
Excellent. And so one of the things that characters can help the adventure is understanding their abilities, like we talked about in episode 2. What abilities do they have? So rangers have the ability to track. And it says outdoors there's a 90% chance of the ranger being able to follow a creature modified as follows. So 90 plus number of characters and how much time has elapsed. It hasn't been 24 hours. So I make a roll behind the screen and I go, oh yes, because these are fresh tracks. You notice where the one trail, the normal trail, it looks like where Elissa would stop collecting wood. There is flattened grass and brushes that have been knocked away, and you estimate probably 2 or 3 creatures have gone this way, and one was dragged.
Am I able to pick up any tracks of the creature? So of how many, the size of the creatures based upon the length of the footprints, anything like that?
You know, it's you definitely feel like they're 2 smaller type creatures. Elissa was a fair thing. She wasn't very big as well, so they're basically 3 creatures. It looks like one was dragged, and in fact, if you look, you may have found. It looks like you may have found the slipper of Elissa. You know, small peasant's daughter's slipper is found, but it looks like two smaller creatures has dragged a larger, smaller creature, if that's such a thing as
Right.
a larger, smaller creature.
And off the track, you said.
That's right,
So
and is moving towards the west.
Glade relays this information to Picksy, exclaiming, and I believe I found where she's been taken. And Picksy really doesn't have much of a reaction, isn't very excited about any of this. Glade then very quickly, just inside the forest, kneels down and thanks Solinar, her deity,
Very good.
for giving her the ability to track successfully.
That's right.
And so, you know, I take this seriously, that if you've got a cleric, I think your cleric should have a very close relationship with the deity, and so that's why I did that.
And in fact, because you were very successful, you feel like your training has that these were some kind of humanoids that has captured, that this is the sense of, like you've probably experienced in the borderlands where you came from. It's very likely that these are humanoids tracks that you're following.
Okay, so Glade is going to lead the way and continue tracking, hoping to find the location where Elissa has been taken.
Okay, so after the trail is very obvious, it's about 12 hours old, plus or minus. It's a day's track. It starts getting to evening. Now, fortunately, are you carrying torches, or are you going to go with infravision at this point?
We are going to go with, so we're both, I've got an elf and a half elf, so both of them would have infravision. We're going to go with just infravision at this point in time, and maybe this is a good point to explain what infravision is, because
quickly,
it's a lot of people think it's ability to see completely in the dark, but
Right.
at least in first edition, it's not quite that good. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say, and especially being outdoors. I normally, if this was my campaign, I would have figured out what kind of moonlight there is. Again, that's the kind of flavor if you're creating a dungeon and a campaign. And what a campaign typically is the world that your adventurers are playing in, and a module or an adventure is just one episode in this series or show known as the campaign. So depending on how much time and effort I've put into the campaign, I would know what kind of moonlight is. So instead I'm going to roll a 1d8, with a 1 being it's a full moon, 1, 2, 3 it has some moonlight, 4, 5, 6 the rest of it's no moonlight or limited.
So let's hope for moonlight.
It is completely pitch black.
And you know, that's the fun of the randomness. So, as a DM, you could have just decided it's a new moon, a full moon, but you rolled it. And when I DM, I enjoy the randomness of
That's
it.
right.
Because I feel like sort of the story is leading me at times too, right? Which I
Exactly.
think is a lot of fun.
It is completely without moonlight. It is a cooler evening, so it's going to be a struggle for you to traverse the forest even with infravision at this point.
Picksy says to Glade, it's getting quite dark. Perhaps we should go back to the tavern, right back to the Rusty Dagger Inn, and spend the night and pick up the trail tomorrow.
What language are you speaking to each other in?
We're speaking very quietly, number one. We would be speaking in Elvish.
Okay.
So that way, good question. And if I could say that on my default for these two would be speaking in Elvish, if I don't tell you otherwise. Glade says, Glade's bothered by this. Glade says we should try to press on. Glade would like to try to continue to follow the track, perhaps by feeling out for broken branches, things like that. Glade wants to press on, right? Glade says, Picksy, there may not be enough time to wait. Let's continue on.
Okay.
So he's going to give it a try.
Because it's completely black and it would be very difficult, and the trees would not emanate anything. It would be extremely difficult to, I would give a very low percentage of following the track, and you would think in your ranger that Glades would feel like it would be very unsuccessful and you may get lost. So if you're going to follow the trail, you probably would need light to do that.
Oh, okay. Glade, recognizing this, is going to, well, the first thing Glade's going to do before this happens, Pixie says to Glade, I'm skilled at climbing. I'm going to climb a tree and using my infravision scan the area to see if I see any creatures nearby.
So make a climb roll as a thief.
And this is
how far up are you going to go? You're going to find a tree. How big a tree you're looking for?
I'm going to find a tree that I think would, a pretty high tree that I'd be able to scan over the tops of the other trees. So probably the highest I can, that at least that goes above most of the other trees. And now this roll, my understanding is that many thief rolls, the DM rolls without the player knowing it, because if I'm trying to hide in shadows, I don't know if I'm successful or not.
Right.
But this one, obviously, I can roll because I'm going to know
the rule is
if I fall or not.
Tell me how high you want to go up. How high do you want to get?
So tell me about the highest tree. What's
you probably find one that's at least 30 feet tall.
Okay, well, and I think I rolled for every 10 feet. Is that right? I want to go up 30 feet.
Okay, and are you going to do anything extra to help assist in your climb?
No, I'm not. I think, well, it's a tree. It looks like it should be fairly, I mean to suggest it's easy to climb, but...
you feel very confident, unless you have a complete failure.
Yeah.
You should be able to...
I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to spend the time getting out rope and things like that. I'm just climb. So I can roll?
Yep.
An 85.
Okay, what's your ability to do it? Because I'm giving you a plus for that because you are climbing a tree as opposed to a slick wall.
Right. My climb walls is 92%.
Okay, so you were successful the first 10 feet.
Okay. 16.
Right, unless you roll 00, you will be successful.
83. I'm up. All right. What do I see?
So as you scan, and again, typically infravision 60 feet, but you're outside and you get a distance, I'm going to have to roll to see if you see something. Somewhere, again, Glades has said the path is going a certain way, probably about half a mile, there may be some faint glow that you may detect. So but it's a haze almost, you're not quite sure.
I'm not able to identify if it's multiple creatures or not, and that's all I see. So
that's correct.
Could be a deer, could be a hobgoblin.
That could be a hobgoblin.
About half a mile away. Okay. And if I have a torch, that torch, of course, is going to ruin my infravision.
That's right.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a choice here. So Glade and Pixie talk about this, and they decide that based upon the urgent nature, they unfortunately have no choice but to light a torch. How thick are the woods?
Well, fortunately it's sparse at this point. Another, for the first 500 yards within the forest, it's a tree here or there. There's more underbrush than actually forest trees. But within another 100 yards past that, the forest gets quite thick. And so when you look, you're actually looking parallel to the line of the trees.
Okay.
And it's right at the edge of where the canopy gets very thick.
Okay, so Pixie is going to, and I believe if I recall correctly from the equipment I bought, I have a torch. One of us has a torch and a tinderbox. We're going to, and we obviously don't see any creatures around us now in the area. We would have picked that up. We're going to light a torch. Okay. Pixie is going to hold it, and therefore Glade is going to try to continue to track.
Okay, so standing behind to illuminate the path slightly in front of Glades.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about a 30-foot range for the torch, if I remember correctly, as far as the light source. So again, outside, you may get a little bit longer. So they're about 35, 40 feet apart from each other. Is that fair?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay, so you're going to continue towards following the path that Glades had found.
If Glade can follow. And I assume that in a situation like this, it's probably more difficult to follow the path, but Glade's going to give it a shot. So far,
whoever you're tracking has made no attempt to conceal their tracks at this point. about halfway through it, she has to stop. It's because of the darkness, and she has to call Pixie up because she's almost lost the track. Got very close to losing it, so she needs more light. Takes a little bit. Takes a couple minutes to reorient itself. That the creatures are very light, and there's less foliage to actually see the broken areas. Okay, so just for the background, what's happening is I rolled. Glades normally has a 90%. I said you got a bonus because these were small creatures within. I rolled a 91, so it's literally right at the chance of not being able to search. And then the second part is I rolled a random encounter. So in first edition, one of the things that is one of the standard things is the random encounter roll. And so they're walking through the forest right now, and unfortunately for them, they've encountered, some creature has spotted them. There's been a random encounter. So I need to roll on the random encounter table to find out what exciting creature has just found them.
Now, can I mention? So,
Yeah,
you're definitely going old school here. It seems to me, because I see that you are opening up the Dungeon Master's Guide
That's
to
right.
determine the random. So you do not have a set list here of monsters that would be appropriate
That's
for
right.
Glade and Pixie to encounter in the wilderness. You're just going to do a random roll in the DMG, and so it could be something very easy to handle.
That's right.
It could be something way beyond Picksy and Glades' abilities, and that's a lot of what 1E's about, isn't
Exactly.
it? Is if you run into something, you can't fight everything you run into. You're going to have to do some running.
Exactly. So
there's no shame in that.
So I determined that the randomness of this was a 1 to 6. You can change as the Dungeon Master the likelihood by changing the dice, and so I used a normal dice. If I rolled a 1, that's when the random encounter came. Now I'm going to, in this case, I'm saying this is in the forest, it's uninhabited wilderness, so I get to roll and see what comes up.
Mind the thickness yet?
You're right at the edge.
Right at the edge.
Yep.
No, you're not going to tell me yet, right?
No, of
Right.
course not.
Okay.
That would be horrible. So now I know what the creature is, and now I need to figure out how far the encounter is from Glades and Pixie.
Yeah, that's the first thing in an encounter is to determine distance, which often isn't done because
Right.
if you're in a dungeon, you know the distance, right? You only have to roll for this random distance, as my understanding, in situations in which you otherwise wouldn't know the distance.
Exactly. So, okay, so I figured out what it is, and so you guys are standing there. You were just trying to figure out the thing. Pixie has gotten closer to Glades to try to help her figure out the path. So roll d6.
And I should mention, one of the smart things to do, I think, when you're playing is to mention things that your characters are doing. I think it would have been better for me to have mentioned, right? And James, the DM, gave me every opportunity to do that, and I didn't take it. James says, okay, so basically, Pixie's holding the torch, Glades 30 feet or so in front. I should have, at that point in time, said, yes, at the same time, Pixie is periodically scanning to the left and to the right just to see if he picks up anything. He didn't do that. So you said to roll a die 6, then I rolled a 4.
Okay, great.
Why was I rolling this again? Do I know yet why I'm rolling
You're
this?
not sure yet.
Okay.
I mean, I could
Fair
be
enough.
nice and tell you, but I'm not.
And that happens a lot. The DM will say, roll a die, and you just roll it. And you don't know why you're rolling it. You don't know if high's good, you don't know if low's good. You'll find out.
Right. Okay, so you hear about deeper within the forest, about 100 yards, you hear a buzzing. That's a sound that appears to be coming closer.
Oh, we both hear it. Both
Yes.
Pixie. Oh, okay.
It starts as I mean, you guys were looking, both your characters were looking down, and you stop what you're doing, you hear bzzz in the distance.
Okay, so I say to Glade, turns to Pixie, and whispers in Elvish, put out the torch. My characters, how does one put out a torch?
Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. You have to tell me how you put out a torch.
Oh, that's terrible, because these people grew up with information I didn't.
Well, I would probably say the easiest way would be into the wet ground and kind of stick it in the
Is
ground.
the ground sort of wet?
It's sort of wet, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's immediately what Pixie's going to do, is follow Glade's suggestion, put out the torch.
Okay.
Glade is going to rush back to Pixie, and they're both going to huddle down, crouching, listening, and looking. And I believe it's about 2 segments. It's faster than I always thought it was. For our eyes to adjust to the use of infravision after being exposed. It's pretty quick, right? So it's a few seconds actually. I used to think it was like 15 minutes. But
It's 2 or 3 segments. I think that's what I would call it. A few seconds it says, but if I don't, they may have adjudicated an official rule.
We're crouching, listening, waiting for adjustment.
Okay.
With infravision to hope that we can pick this up.
So a few seconds later, you see a mass of what appear to be hovering creatures deep inside the woods coming towards you. Now I'm going to make a roll to see if they actually see you or not.
Okay.
I rolled a 3. You're very your party is very lucky. They appear, and you're just seeing giant flying, and the buzzing gets louder and louder as it kind of comes by you within 20 yards and starts moving away. There was about 15 large creatures that passed by.
Don't ever tell me what those were, because I got to tell you, the idea of not ever knowing is more entertaining to me than knowing. So this is great. You know what Pixie and Glade were going to do if those things came at them? Run.
Right.
And this is what I like about it too. Is what I like about the random roll of the DMG is I don't know what those things are. They could have been wildly inappropriate for our level. We have no idea.
Right.
No idea. Right? If you knew this had been an adventure where the random encounters had been set to the level, you'd be like, okay, we're standing here, we're ready to go. But I had no idea. Okay. So Pixie and Glade.
And remind me when we go over that at the end when we do a quick recap some of my adjudication, because I think this is the art and science of being a dungeon master, because again, depending on the type of style, what you want to do, but I'm comfortable with what happened there. Okay, great. So after a few minutes, the buzzing and the sound dissipates. It seems to, again, you track it as far as you can. Your infravision then fails at some point because they move out of range.
The sound is gone.
The sound is gone, yes.
So Pixie and Glade look at each other and just sort of shake their heads. We don't know what that was.
Right.
Basically. So, well, let's keep moving.
Okay.
And so relight the torch. Try to pick the track up again.
Okay.
Moving into the deeper forest.
Are you moving at any faster speed, or you're continuing to that speed?
We're going to move as fast as we can. That Glade is still confident of picking up the trail. So as fast as we can go without losing the trail. We're not going to jeopardize losing the trail.
Okay. So you've picked up the pace a little bit, and in fact, as you're continuing, because you are very nervous about, obviously, you're not sure why these creatures, if at all, why they knew you were there, and roll under your intelligence, both of your characters.
Okay, and we would call this an ability check, right?
So this is not in the rules, actually. This is kind of an evolution of when you need to determine some probability of something occurring that's not a natural skill. So what has come is if you roll under an attribute that seems appropriate, in this case, intelligence, I'm trying to allow the characters to have some insight that they may have based on their intelligence experience that the player Dan, would not know.
And you could modify this if you wanted to as a DM, right? You could say, and this is the only role. Not the only role, but one of the few roles where lower is better.
Right.
Because you want to be unequal to or under your intelligence. So Pixie has a 17 intelligence, and Glade has a 13 intelligence. So here goes for Pixie, a 7. So Pixie is successful, and Glade a 10. Both are successful.
So but you quickly talk in hushed tones, and you feel like the light must have attracted, these are creatures. This is probably some kind of natural, or at least creatures that are denizens of the forest. And so you need to be very careful with the light source that may attract others or those creatures again.
Oh, I see. So Pixie and Glade are... But without the light source, there's no tracking going on.
That is well, it's extremely difficult.
We're going to risk it.
Okay.
And this may be one of those situations where the DM is trying to give the players a clue, and I've been on this side, or the DM side on this one, the players just don't get a clue.
Right.
But I'm going to continue with I got to make a choice. we're going to continue with it, but we will be. But Pixie is going to continue to look to. I know it's quite dark, but we'll continue to look to the left and the right as they go, and we're going to keep moving with the light.
So after about an hour, so we started this adventure roughly around 6 o'clock. Now it's around 7 p.m. So it's now dark. It's what we would call fall in this world. So now it's completely dark. More let's say 8 o'clock. It's been a couple hours. You talked to the blacksmith and did all that. You sense that. Let me roll here. Okay, so it comes into somewhat of a clearing as you get to. You've kind of skirted between the forest and the open area, and now Glades realizes that the creatures are not anymore in the forest, but they appear to be going to a clearing. You're at the edge of the clearing. The light is illuminating out at this point. What do you do?
Can we see into the clearing?
Well, again, you only have a 30-foot plus or minus light source, so you know there's a clearing, but you don't really see anything beyond that.
Oh, I see. So the clearing is it looks like to be a fairly large clearing.
Yes.
So beyond what we can. And are we right at the edge of it now?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So
the trail continues to skirt, and it looks so. Basically, you've been here's the to the left of you is where the blacksmith and everyone else is. The kind of plains. You're in the transition between the plains and the forest, and now instead of it continuing, there's now an opening, clearing basically to the right of you.
Okay, and the path continues.
And path continues. In other words, it comes out and then it moves towards where the deeper in the forest at this point. And you notice that some of the trees have actually been cut here. That's the difference, as opposed to the other places.
Okay. Infravision is about 60 feet.
Yeah, but I'm going to give you yards outside. I'm going to give you a little bit longer distance. It may not be yards, but I'm kind of saying, but probably double or triple the distance.
Okay. We're going to put out the torch. I'd like to use our infravision.
Okay.
Picksy and Glades like to use our infravision.
Right.
To scan for a bit. So hopefully there's a way to put out the torch to show some wet ground in the area without creating a wildfire. Put out the torch.
Okay.
And scan.
All right.
And let me ask you this. So this clearing, could they go around? So each one could walk around the edge of the clearing, correct?
Right. So what you have is you're basically continuing this. You're going forward. To the left of you is the plains that's where the blacksmith and everything else was. Instead of, you notice that there's been chopped. The trees have been chopped, and it kind of goes. The part of the forest that was thicker goes this way. So, but the trail goes past, and it goes into more of the clearing area. And when you turn off the infravision, immediately you don't see anything.
By the torches, we don't see anything.
Right, immediately, because you're still.
Oh, right, correct. All right, so we're gonna wait our few seconds to adjust, and do we pick up any heat source? Because infravision is gonna pick up sources of heat.
Right. So very in the distance, about 40 yards away, you notice two small, what appear to be creatures, and again, without seeing, because it's dark, you notice also a slight glow in between them. Maybe it's and there may be some. It looks like kind of it's pulsing, at least from the distance that you're at, between heat and not heat.
Oh, so two, I think, are creatures, and in between them, something changing.
Very light. Yeah, the temperature's changing. It's going from dark to slightly. And it's almost oscillating, but not in a fixed look there.
And would this be standing in the clearing?
Well, it appears to be, it's in the clearing, but at the edge of the deep part of the forest.
In the clearing, but kind of like on the other side of the clearing.
That is correct.
So would Pixie be able to? Because Glade turns to Pixie and whispers and says, "You're the thief. This is where I've done this tracking. Now we need you to do some scouting."
Okay.
And Pixie says, and turns to Glade, "Oh yeah, and what's the reward again for this?" And Glade says, "Come on, don't worry about that. What's wrong with you, Pixie?" Mm-hmm. And Glade wouldn't see this because it's dark. Pixie rolls his eyes
Right.
and says, whatever. Pixie is going to try to move silently. Right? That's a thief's skill.
Right.
Right? Well, hopefully.
That's right.
They
Hopefully it's a skill that will work.
It's always going to work. It's going to try to move silently. And I don't know if there's another thief skill is hide in shadows. Now I know it's dark, so it doesn't sound like there are any shadows to use. But so I want to move silently to around the clearing to get to a position where Pixie might be able to overhear anything that these creatures are saying.
Okay.
And Glade, just to let you know, Glade is going to pull out Glade's bow.
Okay.
Glade has a short bow.
Right.
And notch an arrow just to get ready in case anything happens.
Great. And you're about 50 yards away from where these creatures are.
Yes, and what is the range on a bow? You've got short, medium, and long, right? For
That's
the
right.
effectiveness. And the player's handbook, I believe, will tell me.
And I believe, because those get converted to yards, and...
Because we're outside, everything changes when you're outside.
That's right. So any of the...
Short.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, it says 5, 10, 18
Right,
on range.
so you're right at short range at 50 yards.
Oh, good, that's nice, because that means if it's short range,
You get
there's no penalty,
no
right?
penalties, that's right. Classic first edition, you don't get any bonuses, you just don't get minuses.
you're in good shape.
That's right.
Yes, if you didn't die, you don't have any penalties, that's the flavor of it all.
That's right. So you're going to... What is your move silent...
Yes. So Pixie's... Is this really true? Is this from an old... Did I forget to erase this from somebody... This may be somebody else's.
Yeah.
Because I erased this. I can't believe that I have 52. I'm a level 1 thief.
Yeah.
I fear that this looks kind of... It's lightly written.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
based on first level thief, move silently, and you're an elf or a half elf?
I'm an elf.
Yeah, so you have a 20%.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I use this. I didn't want to use it.
What's your dex?
My dex is... A 13?
Yeah, that's right. Remember, because you didn't, you put all your thing in intelligence.
That's terrible.
Right, so you have a 20% chance of moving silent.
Yeah.
And so
I probably gave you a bad score on my climb walls,
Yeah,
but whatever.
yeah, it's probably the bard who's, remember, that's
Yes,
the bard.
that's right. I think these all been erased.
That's right. He was a 9th level thief. Yeah, that was...
None of these things happen.
Probably Pixie fell 40 feet to her death at that point. But
Yeah.
that's what makes it okay. Okay, so I'm going to roll to see if Pixie is successful.
Because you're not telling me if
Right.
I'm successful. And can I ask you something about this? And move silently. So this is one of the thief rolls. A lot of DMs like to roll on their own without telling the player. So I don't know if I've been successful in moving silently. If you roll really poorly for me, like let's say you roll a 0-0, 100,
Right.
which would be terrible. Would you tell me something like you step on a twig,
Right.
and then you know? So is there a point in time in which you would say to the player, "It's so obvious you're not moving silently"?
Right.
You would do that?
I would do that.
Okay.
I would do that. I would, hide in shadows is a different thing because you would not know. I mean, maybe at 100 you may somehow see your shadow on the wall and you may go, "Oh, okay, that's a problem." But yes, I would give that information. And so, how close were you going to get to the creatures? How close was Pixie
I was going to periodically. I would stop and listen, and so I would want to stop at a point in time where hopefully I can overhear something. And at the same point, I'd like to know if I'm able to get a better visual
Okay.
of the shape of these creatures.
Yeah, well, I mean, based on your, you're not a young, Pixie's an elf, right?
Correct.
So for the last 150 years, you've been in the woods. So you probably need another 20 yards to get closer. Within 30 yards, you should be able to identify what.
Because I am. The Pixie was a hunter, isn't it?
That's
Pixie,
right.
Secondary skills.
That's right, secondary skill. So
Hunter.
about 100, another 20 yards you have to get to. So you're going to move 20 yards, skirting the edge. Is that what I understood?
Pixie is saying to himself, "I can't believe we're doing this for a copper piece, probably."
Right.
And grumbles about Glade, but continues on.
Okay. So after 10 yards of moving, Glades hears the shuffling of Pixie as he is trying to be stealthy. Now, maybe because she's a ranger, but it's very obvious to her that she's hearing him disappear into the...
But Pixie, of course, doesn't know this. So, but now would Glade be able to? So, what's the distance between Glade and Pixie?
They're
and then
10
Pixie
yards
to the.
There's 10 yards to each other, and then 40 yards to the creatures.
Okay, so Glade is going to. Glade is going to try to catch up. Oh, to Pixie. Now I know Glade is not a thief. Glade is going to try to catch up to Pixie.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming behind Pixie and sort of saying, "Psst, I can hear you," in Elvish, which I understand may make things worse.
So yes, in a ranger stealthy way, as opposed to, because there is no move silent for rangers, and that's one of the interesting things. There's you always think of back to Strider and being somewhat rangers being stealthy, but there is no mechanical thing for that. But you get to, and both Pixie and Glades fixate themselves on the two creatures, and they don't appear to be moving, but you don't know that for a fact. Again, you're too far away. And the center area appears to be a 20-foot wide distance between the two goblins. So there's
Goblins.
Oh, exactly, they're goblins. I said it already. So, well, now you know. Hey, they're goblins,
Yeah.
and it appears to be the oscillating. Now that you've got a little bit closer, that it may be smoke that is coming out of something, almost an entranceway.
Well, you notice that I had the player's handbook open. So what I'm going to tell you I was about to do even before you said they were goblins. Because when Glade catches up to Pixie, Glade says to Pixie basically, "Where did you get your thief training? You know, you're so noisy.
Right.
Let me handle this." And Pixie's like, "Fine, go for it. Yeah, I don't even care. I'll be back at the end." Glade's, "No, I'll handle this." Glade is, I'm going to look up the sleep spell.
Okay.
Right. I'm sorry. No, that would be Pixie, right? So I'm
Yes.
sorry. Glade is Glade is a magic user. So Glade is going to say, no. You need to use not your thief skills, which seem not to be considerable, but your magic user skills. You should cast a sleep spell on those creatures.
Okay.
That way it won't hurt them, but they'll fall asleep. So I'm going to look up the sleep spell, because of course here what's going to be important is range. And let me go to first level. The sleep spell is a wonderful spell.
Right.
It's.
I believe the range is 30 feet. 30.
It is plus 10 feet per level.
Right. So you're 40 feet. 40 yards.
No, it's yards, right?
That's
That's right. So 40 yards, because we're outside. That converts to yards. And how far away would I estimate they are?
40 yards from where you intercepted, when Glades intercepted Pixie.
And 40 feet. Oh, so that's, just because the DM says 40 yards doesn't mean it's not actually. It might be 41. I'm going to try. So I say to Glade says to Pixie, "Move a little closer. Try to be quieter this time." And then cast a sleep spell.
Right.
So that's what. So Pixie is going to try to move a little bit closer just to make sure it is within range. I don't like that right at the border.
Okay.
And then after moving up, hopefully not making a lot of noise, is going to pull out of Pixie's cloak a pinch of fine sand. It says a pinch of fine sand, rose petals. It says or a live cricket, so I can have any one of those three.
Yes, you have to eat the live cricket if I remember correctly.
Oh, I don't. It just says or a live cricket. Well,
maybe some other.
it looks like I can have any of those.
Yes.
Right. And what I love about them is that they usually make sense. The cricket, I think, is because you think of like nighttime and sleeping
like
crickets.
Crickets.
Sand, like Sandman.
Yeah.
I don't know about the rose petals.
Maybe a bath or something. Maybe Gygax like. I don't know.
Am I the only person who is entertained by spell components and likes them?
Well,
and wants to use them?
and in fact, I didn't ask you where you got your spell components. I mean, that should have been the adventure, the search for the spell components.
Search for the spell components.
I apologize.
But we're going to assume I have those?
Yes. Well, during the off time, you
Thank
applied
you.
those.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Move up. Probably, another, I'd say, 10 feet to make sure I'm within range. Pull out the sand components. And this has a verbal, somatic, and material component. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of speaking. I'm going to have to do a little bit of motion. and with the spell components, and cast. It's only one segment,
Right.
so it's just 6 seconds. Cast, and the area of effect is special. Now, my understanding, this affects a certain number of creatures, right?
Well, it's a 30-foot diameter area.
Okay.
That's
Right.
That's the area effect, and then depending how powerful the spell goes off by the number of dice rolls, that's how many creatures get affected. So typically, there's a couple ways you could do this, but the way I do it is, unlike our session last time when the characters were just doing a bunch of things, and there's a whole conversation of when do you call for initiative or surprise. Typically, the way I do it is if a character does a hostile action, there should be some kind of roll initiative. Regardless, there is no Greedo shot first versus Han Solo. So in this case, Pixie's attempting to do her spell. You guys are within range. You're making some sound. You're pulling things out. So I'm not going to say they appeared not to know you, so I'm going to roll a surprise for them. If they're not surprised, then it's initiative at that point.
Okay.
You're going to make some sound, and they're going to probably look over. They may not do anything.
Well, I was going to ask would you at this point also do another move silently roll? Because Pixie wasn't moving very silently. Is starting up again. I don't know, how you handle that. If I continue to not move silently, or
Pixie's not having a good day when she's pulling out her spell components.
Yes.
Her bag falls down. So we're going to roll.
Glade is shaking her head.
You have to roll surprise just to see how many segments the other. Your party's not be able to be surprised, but as a ranger, you get advantages to surprise. But I need to know how many segments the goblins may be surprised if they are. So they're going to be surprised. I'm going to even say on a 1 to 4, which is exceptional.
So I'm going to roll for their surprise.
Right. Well, you're rolling for you. But you can't be surprised.
Oh, right. Okay.
So 3. Right. 2. So they are surprised for how. So they are surprised.
Okay.
And you rolled the 3. So again, they are surprised for 3 segments or 2 segments based on that. I forgot.
What'd you roll? You rolled?
I rolled a 2.
My understanding is it's just based. The only time you do a difference between the two is if both parties are surprised. So my understanding is they would be surprised for 2 rounds.
Two segments.
2 segments.
That's right. Okay. So because of that, they are even though Pixie dropped her bag and was fumbling around, he got his act together.
The sand did not.
Yeah, the sand didn't just fly everywhere. Maybe she caught a few of it and then threw it down.
Enough, yeah. What a mess.
Now it's all over Glades.
Yeah.
Now she's in some fine powdered sand, but is able to cast a spell. Now you get to roll how many creatures are affected. So typically, there's a table within which page is that on?
It is on page 68 of the player's handbook.
So just to make this easy, I typically tell the player to roll 4d4 and we adjudicate that up just in case there's mixed. So he's rolling 4d4, another exciting podcast moment.
9.
So he's
Total
rolling
9.
9. So 9 creatures of under 1 hit dice would be affected. Is that correct?
Yeah, up to 1.
Up to 1.
Up to
right.
1.
So goblins, and now that you've moved a little bit closer, you recognize, yes, they are goblins. And you see them, they had spears and they collapsed down to the ground.
So there was 2 of them.
That you see 2 of them.
Okay, so do we see, and we don't see any other?
No, but it's now clear that is an entranceway. There were 2 doors that are partially open and there appears to be smoke emanating out of the ground. It's like, it's almost, it's a raised area that has 2 doors open and there's smoke coming out.
Oh, so like they've come from underground. Okay, so then Glade turns to Pixie and says, "Nice job, Pixie." And Pixie says, "Of course." And Pixie and Glade says, "Come on, let's go check them out." And Glade starts moving into the clearing toward the goblins. Pixie follows. They're going to come upon them, and we're going to search them.
Okay. So you search them.
Looking around, and Glade is just say, "I'll search them, Pixie. You keep an eye out."
Okay.
So Pixie's going to be watching and scanning 360 degrees.
Okay. So to search them, how long are you going to take to search them?
Not very long. I mean, we're looking for probably just about like 30 seconds each, looking for keys, anything like that.
Well, they appears to have one small little pouch, and they had their spears that they were holding. That's what you see with 30 seconds. You quickly search them. They have a little pouch.
Okay. Each has a pouch?
Yes.
Okay. Stick the hand. So Glade's going to stick her hand in each pouch.
They feel like coins. It's dark out. There's no sun. There's no things out there at this point.
So Glade turns to Pixie and says, "Look, Money, are you happy now?" And Pixie says, "Well, I'm feeling a little better about things now. Can we go?" And Glade says, "Yeah, you mean down the hole?" And Pixie says, "No, back to the inn. We've got our money." And Glade says, "Oh, no, we've got to find the daughter,
Elissa,
Elissa.
that's right.
Elissa needs us." So Glade, again, rolls his eyes. Pixie rolls his eyes. Glade doesn't see that. So, no light source. Right, just
Yep.
but we can. So how do we know that? So how do we know that there's a door there? We can just basically, does it seem to be open?
Yeah,
or
well,
information
basically,
that we make it out?
basically, as you get closer, now you knew that there's these double doors that are ajar, open.
They're open.
They were pulled open,
Ah,
and so you now, and the steam is kind of emanating around the doors.
it's the steam. What's the source of the
Steam
steam?
and smoke is coming from the ground.
Coming. Oh,
So the doors are slightly ajar open, almost like a fruit cellar,
yeah.
but these are larger doors, and they've been open ajar. They're made of nice stonework, so there must be some kind of pneumatic mechanism to keep them somewhat open. It should be
Yeah.
closing, but they are slightly open. So this is very finely made construction, and there's smoke emanating from there. You know, a light whiffs of smoke, some kind of smoke or fire underneath is causing the heat. That's what you guess.
Right.
And now it's been a couple of minutes since you've cast your spell.
Oh, thank you. That's right. So would I know how long this lasts on these creatures?
You would know that. Well,
So
Pixie would know that.
Pixie, and how long is that? So.
About 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So Pixie turns to Glade and says, "Glade, this spell's not going to last long. These goblins will be waking up soon." And so, can we go off the record here
Sure.
for a second? It says, "I think this is always an interesting issue. The killing of creatures." So, now my understanding is that a ranger, right, the perception ranger by many is that the ranger hates
Right.
humanoids,
Right.
right? That they should be killed. There's nothing wrong with this. Pixie's chaotic neutral. Pixie probably has no problem with this. They're definitely goblins,
Yes.
right? Can I ask you now about the setting? Like, you know, if you're running a game like this,
Mhm.
is it possible that you would have sort of different approaches to this world and this campaign? I mean, are goblins... So I run a campaign, as you know, you play in it, set in the city-state of the Invincible Overlord, where you actually have goblins working in the city.
Right.
And it's a very unusual dynamic. Is this more your classic
Right.
AD&D that you're running here, where goblins are bad,
Right.
goblins are evil, killing a goblin, if you're good, no problem?
I would say, at least for Glades, the fact that she was making decapitated figurines of humanoids.
Forgot about that backstory.
Right. I would be very concerned if she allowed the goblins to live.
Got it.
Regardless of that. I mean, you have surmised in kind of like Old West justice that the daughter who was innocent was brought here. Goblins are known to do that.
Yeah. They'll do it again.
Right.
Right, if they're not...
We do not need to bring this to the magistrate or the town elder. You have been given permission by the local authority, which was John the blacksmith. You have no other authority that you must rescue the daughter at any cost. This is terminate with extreme prejudice, and so now I would say that would be the kind of default for the ranger.
Got it.
For Pixie,
I could play it as I want.
That's right.
So Glade is going to say, when Pixie says, "They'll be waking soon, this doesn't last long," Glade says, "They won't be waking." And Glade pulls out, let's see, I assume Glade has
Did you write it down?
a long sword, short bow, and dagger.
Okay, there you
I
go.
did. Is going to take out the dagger and cut the throats. And I know there's a rule, I think, on how long it takes
Right.
to slay a sleeping.
One creature per round.
Okay, is going to cut the throats of each one and says to Pixie, I'll take this one, you take the other."
Okay.
And Glade pulls it out, and Pixie says to Glade, "Oh yeah, and I'm the one with the problems because I just care about money. This is mildly disturbing."
That's right.
And Glade is gonna kill one, and Pixie says, "Well, you can take care of both of them.
Right. So simultaneously you kill them. You both Pixie and Glades do a coup de grace on each of the sleeping goblins, ending their lives. In the meantime, let's see.
And so basically with the infravision, like the light source just goes out.
That's right. Eventually they start fading out. That's right. Okay. As you are slaying the two goblins, Pixie, as he's finishing off the goblin, a spear lands within 5 feet of him, and you both look up and you see another goblin appearing out of the forest, and had just thrown a spear. So now it is initiative.
Got it.
So.
And do we declare action?
Yes, if you're casting a spell, you would need to declare action,
now,
and at least give me a general idea of what you're planning to do.
Now, unfortunately, Pixie, as a first-level magic user, has basically exhausted.
That's right.
He's done. His one spell
he's
for
done.
the day, and Glade. Oh, and Glade just has the cure light one. So no. So Pixie and Glade are both going to jump up, and they are going to engage. They will rush toward this what they believe is a goblin.
Yeah, the goblin was within 40 feet, 40 yards of them. So basically where you were, that's where the goblin.
Got it. And the spear's been thrown. So yes, they're going to turn around and rush.
So as a dungeon master, I'm calling for initiative because there is no surprise. They threw the. I could have tried to do a surprise against the players, but basically the goblin took advantage of the fact that Pixie and Glades were busy ending the two goblins on the ground. He took the opportunity to throw a spear, and he does make a shriek of some kind of goblin. I think one of your creatures speaks. One of your players' characters speaks.
Oh, the elves, yeah.
Right. So Briark kind of thing.
Briark, got it. All right. So I rolled a 3.
I rolled a 6.
And in first edition, it is party initiative, right?
That's right. It's party initiative. So there's one goblin, and what he is going to do is he starts and turns and runs back after seeing that he was not successful in slaying one of you. Turns and runs back towards the forest.
Oh, we're chasing.
Okay.
So Glade says, "Let's go," and Pixie's grumbles and follows.
Okay, so you're chasing them. Now there's whole very advanced rules in this, but basically the way you can rule it is, what are your movements for each of your characters?
And this would be based upon, it start with the armor that we're wearing, right?
Correct.
And of course
encumbrance, which I'm sure you figured out in the off time.
I have not. So Pixie is wearing...
What game are we playing, Dan? This is first edition.
The way it was played in the 80s, no one... right, that's the way. With encumbrance? What? I still don't understand the encumbrance magic armor issue and all that, but whatever. It's been explained to me many times.
When two rules collide.
Yeah, but I do not have.
So just
leather armor.
Okay.
And what armor was Glade wearing?
I don't know. You probably didn't buy any armor.
I probably didn't buy any armor.
So you don't. So you're easily moving very quickly.
So I have no armor.
You have no armor. That's right.
Did you buy armor? No.
No.
Okay. Good. This is to my advantage.
That's right.
Why would a ranger have armor?
So you're moving at 12, assuming you don't have any.
And Pixie too, with leather armor. Yeah, Pixie got like nothing. This is a spell book.
Yeah. So and what's her strength?
Spell book's bouncing around. Pixie's a 12.
Yeah. So
and Glade's a 50.
Yeah. So you are clearly. So you're twice as fast as the goblin.
Oh, all right. And and Glade says, "I'll go to the right. You go to the left, Pixie."
Right.
You go around.
So they kind of do the velociraptor thing.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to say after a round, you are now both Pixie and Glades are to the side of them. So let's roll initiative.
Right. So we're like on that blob.
Right. So you're on it.
A 2. A 1. Yes.
Okay. So you are now. So each of you have ended up right next to the goblin.
Oh, I didn't tell you. So all right. So Pixie, who's also a thief, right, is going to pull out a long sword.
Mm-hmm.
Glade, I've got 2 long swords. Glade is going to pull out a long sword. So 2 long swords coming down on this hapless goblin.
So who's going first?
Let's go Pixie.
Okay. So the goblin's armor class is 6, And Pixie is a thief magic user, correct?
Right?
Is an elf though, right?
That is correct.
So you, with longsword, you get +1 to hit.
I did not know that. Where's that coming from?
From the player's handbook. We did this last episode.
Because of the.
Because of natural racial ability of being an elf, you get +1 to swords, longsword and short and short bow. Yep.
And I know is the ranger going to get some benefits because this is against a goblin?
Only on damage.
Only on damage. Okay.
Yes.
So 14 for Pixie.
I believe that's a hit because against. But again, with being a thief, I didn't have my fancy wheel that was coming out of Dragon 74, which would be my suggestion if you're going to run this and not use any fancy computer tech.
You can still
tools.
find those on eBay, I believe.
That's
right.
right.
On eBay.
Or you, I think the PDF is flying around. So you're a thief?
I'm a thief. 14.
Thief. AC 6. The goblin's AC 6. You needed a 15, but you rolled a 14 +1 because you're an elf, so you hit.
Yes. All right, and it's a longsword. Is that 1 to 8?
That's 1 to 8, correct. That's a D10.
All right. Sorry, it's true. You're keeping me honest. To 3.
Okay, so the goblin normally has 1 to 7 hit points. So I'm basically going to just roll a D8, and with the 8 not counting.
Okay.
1. 1 hit point. The goblin has 1 hit point, and Pixie, upset with just his inability to do thieving, has thrust the sword and
Can I have Glade? Would they have gone at the same time?
Oh, yes.
Glade roll too, because this is important. If Glade missed and Pixie, the dynamic here between them. There's a 2.
That's right.
So Glade is just.
So Glade swings over the goblin's head, but Pixie's strike hits true, and the goblin shrieks and collapses to the ground.
And Pixie looks up and says to Glade in Elvish, "You almost hitting me. What's wrong with you?" And all right, so cleans off. I don't know what we cleaned off with.
Yeah, the blackened blood of a goblin.
Pixie takes the long sword and wipes it off on Glade's cloak.
This would be probably a good time to end our session for today. We've had adventure, right? Interaction, some exploration. So what happens next time? Both characters realize they may not be as prepared for the trials of combat. All their training, while they thought they were prepared, the thieving didn't work as well. And unfortunately, Glade has decided that armor is optional for her profession.
Glade may have to take a trip back to the blacksmith, to the town, and
Will there be
find
enough
some
time?
armor.
Will there be enough time?
No, there's not going to be enough time. Glade's going in.
That's right. Well, so these are some of the moral and strategic conundrums with that. But I think this is a good stop. And we can we'll go over the major components of an adventure with this, and we'll pick this up next time. We'll do a little bit of adventuring, and then we'll talk about each of the main components of that.
Can Glade fit into goblin armor?
No, I'll have to see. We do for height and weight. We'll have to see.
Okay.
They are 4 foot tall, so you may be able to.
5'5".
Yeah, you may
Maybe a little tight.
You may be able to fashion some armor with it, maybe a padded armor equivalent, but I wouldn't give anything more than that.
So yeah, all right. So you may want to think about that.
Okay.
I think that's when we pick up.
Yeah.
Glade is going to be trying to fit into goblin armor,
Okay.
and I'd like to see how that goes.
I'll see if it's a really fat goblin. I'll have to do height weight for goblins. I'll need to look on the internet, see if people have come up with tables with that. Okay, so we leave the adventure here. What will Glades and Pixie be successful in saving Elissa, John's daughter? Are there more goblins in the forest that will see their dead compatriots? What other horrors lie beneath the open doors? All right, very good.
It's exciting. Thank you.
That's great. Hopefully everyone got a feel for that. So our next segment is Word of Recall, and in this segment, this would be the first adventure someone would be running. Do you recall what your first adventure was in AD&D, or at least some memories of it?
I don't, but I have a story about that, and I'm very unhappy that I don't know. So I remember who ran it, and I reached out to this person on Facebook.
Oh, really?
But they didn't respond.
Hmm.
And I asked them.
Do you know if they're alive still?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
sometimes people, Facebook's been around long enough. People may have. We're of a certain age at this point. We can't assume that people on Facebook are still alive.
That's a good point.
It's disturbing, but it's true.
Because I reached out because I remember quite distinctly going over to his house and playing this game, and I think, like yourself, I came from a wargaming background, and I was just mesmerized by the fact that there was no board.
Right.
And I don't remember the event. I'd love to know. I'd love to know. I think it may have been basic. Is that the one that had the? I remember a dragon on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a box with the dragon on the cover, and
That's
you got
right.
the wizard of the blue. I think. I don't know. I think I may have started basic. I'd love to know what adventure was. A keep on the borderlands. What was it? But so no. I unfortunately I don't know. Do you know?
Yes, I do recall. I grew up north and moved down south. I visited my grandmother in the south, and my cousin was here, and some of his friends played. I'd never heard of the game when I was up north, and so we went over, and I was given a character. I remember it was a thief, because it sounded good to me. We're going to steal stuff. It was like an adventure game. And I had already played some Commodore 64 computer games, so are you getting a picture of my life? Dungeons and Dragons, computer games, rock, metal.
That was the 80s. How old were you? What year are we talking?
This was 1982. So I was about 12 years old at that point.
You're young.
Yes, I was very young at that
No,
point.
you are young.
Oh, thank you.
You are young. You're
Well,
a young guy. Yeah.
Young to some. I'll be turning 50 this year. So. Anyway, fast forwarding, what made it interesting was it was during the summer. I came down for summer vacation, and the dungeon master, who was a friend of mine for a number of years, we were in a contest. It was some kind of almost weird tournament, and he had a bunch of random tables, and it was basically you could wager your life, or you could wager a certain amount of money, and then he would roll. That your thief would have to do an art project versus, and you'd be randomly paired up with other compatriots. So it could be picking pockets, or it could be writing a musical score. And so it was kind of fun, this mixing and matching. It was very gonzo, but it was a lot of fun. I was like, wow, that's amazing. So one of the characters had a half-orc assassin, and he had to do a musical contest against a bard. It was very Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, trying to go against death kind of thing before that thing. So we did it for hours. It was silly and stupid, but it was a lot of fun. And then the first official one was like you, basic, the red box that had Keep Along the Borderlands, and we'll talk about some famous modules and our perspectives of that. Another friend up north, when I went back, played that, and just the thing of playing a video game, but having all the freedom to do things was just amazing. So,
are you still in contact? The guy who ran that first adventure, because
I haven't talked to him in about 15 years. I'm not a social media guy. That's one of the things that I'm very leery about with this, is to do social media, just because of the time and effort is. But if we're going to build a community around this game and this time period that we love, all the games that came here, I'm going to need to get over that.
It's going to be great is if he could run a reunion game, run that game.
Yeah.
Again.
I mean,
I'm sure he still has it somewhere.
35 years later, 36 years later, I still remember that. So, that's going to be, this Word of Recall is going to be a recurring feature, because I think part of what makes first edition is not only the power and the longevity of the game, but what we got out of it. So our next segment is suggestion, where we cast a suggestion on you. So Dan, I know you've been a big fan of Judges Guild, so maybe you can cast why Judges Guild and what it is, and some of the products that you've seen that you appreciate from that.
Oh, we're still going. See, I thought we were done. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm glad. All right, a new segment. So Judges Guild. So back in the day, in the 80s, to me, TSR was D&D, of course, and all of their supplements and their modules. The only ones we played with, that I recall, were from TSR. I was never familiar with any of these third parties who made adventures like Judges Guild. So the fact that I've gotten back into it now, for whatever reason, I've gotten more interested in third-party adventures. I think because they're ones that people don't know about, and it's if you're going to run an adventure, but I know you're running against the Giants, which is a classic, and it sounds like it's going very well, so it certainly can be done. Part of the concern I have is, does everyone know them? So I've been running a lot of adventures from Judges Guild and other third-party makers, and I think that...
And they were a separate company, right, basically?
Yeah, so my understanding of Judges Guild is that Bob Bledsoe went to Gary Gygax and said, "Look, I'd like to create adventures. We'd like to do supplementary material." And Gary Gygax didn't think that would be particularly profitable, and said, "Have at it," and gave a license to Judges Guild. And Judges Guild just started turning out lots and lots of material with campaign settings like the Witherlands campaign setting, which had the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. So,
Which is where we're playing in your game.
yep. And lots and lots of modules and lots of supplemental material, you know, the character sheets, they took over, you know, they had the Judges Guild Journal, if I recall correctly, they took over the Dungeoneer, which was, you know, J. Craze magazine, and so just started generating tons and tons of supplementary material. And I think the reality is some's good, some's not so good, so it's a bit hit or miss with the Judges Guild material. We've not yet gotten to the levels in our party in the campaign I'm running where I've been able to run some of the really classic Judges Guild adventures, like Teagle Manor is talked about a lot. Some of the Janelle Jaquay's adventures, Dark Tower, Caverns of Thracia. Haven't gotten to those yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, I think that's a nice thing about getting back into the game, is discovering that there was a lot more out there than just Keep on the Borderlands and, you know, some of the, you know, Secret of Solomon, some of the classic adventures that we went through. So discovering, I was going to say rediscovering, but it's discovering it anew.
Yeah, we were talking offline and before the podcast, and that, you know, for me, I assumed Dungeons and Dragons started with the Player's Handbook or the 1978-79, and there's, you know, a number of years before that, the original D&D. And it really only till recently where I wanted to understand the history of it. It's you know, you're trying to, not, nostalgia comes in two forms, right? Reminiscing, but also understanding the context of the things that you liked, and realizing that there's a whole history before that. And you know, it's interesting, my kids, who are now, some of them are in their mid-20s, you know, they look back to the 90s and kind of see their beginning there, when actually there's obviously things before it. We all have that kind of, the world started when we paid attention to it. So Judges Guild I found very interesting, and you know, we're going to need to do some research on the milieu of how they got, because the city-state of Invincible Overlord is so antithetical from the way Dungeons and Dragons started to be played, particularly in the later time when it's very heroic, high magic, epic events. This is a very gritty, weird kind of homage to New York City, almost. You mentioned the city-state.
Yeah, New York City in the 70s. Yeah, I think, so we've played a fair number of original D&D adventures. I've used those, right? So we were just going through one the other night, a publication from a company called We Warriors. We're doing the Dwarven Glory. Apparently the first standalone module ever was from We Warriors, Palace of the Vampire Queen. This is the second one, Dwarven Glory. And we've done other OD&D ones too, from the Dungeoneer magazine in the 70s. And what I've realized, and the city-state was the 70s, is, so it is very sort of gonzo. You know, you've got the Pixie running the thrift shop, and you've got trolls, you know, working in the city-state, and goblins working in the city-state.
And these creatures would be typically monsters. They would be evil and would not be in civilized area. That's what makes it unique.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about it is so my experience looking back at these older adventures is that what people say about the different approaches to the game is true. And what's great about it is adventures allow us to get insight into how the game was actually played at certain times.
Yeah.
So we're going to play an adventure that was written in 1977. You're gonna get an opportunity to see experience exactly the way it was played in 1977, and I think that's amazing. I think that's wonderful, and I love that learning experience. And so what they say seems to be true. The older adventures seem to be what they call very Monty Hall. The amount of gold pieces and treasure is amazing. Everyone's walking around, even the monsters with +2 swords. I think that it's called sort of random. You know, there's not always a lot of backstory. It's very thin on the plot.
Right.
It's left for you to fill it in if you want to. And I actually believe that that's sort of the Gonzo approach to the city state, which is, you walk in and there's a troll that's, the barmaid, or, I think, you guys went into a place, I think, it was Delphi's Delight, where there was skeletons were serving
Right.
you.
Skeleton waiters and waitresses kind of thing.
I believe that a lot of D&D players want that. Actually, they're not bothered by that. Even the gang from the '80s, like myself, that doesn't bother them that much. I think players like to be a bit gonzo at times, and so I think some of that. And this is probably a whole another podcast, but I think a lot of the way the game was played in the '80s was a bit gonzo, even though it wasn't supposed to be gonzo. Players played it kind of wacky and gonzo at times.
It's a game, and people enjoyed it that way.
Right, and so. But so it's been a lot of fun seeing the different adventures from the different eras, though. As I mentioned to you, I like a bit of I'd like to get to something from the 80s, so I've done a lot of 70s stuff.
If people want to get Judges Guild, how have you been getting the material for that?
Yeah, so eBay's a wonderful thing, so the ability to get older adventures. I mean, the bad is that a lot of these adventures can be expensive.
Yeah.
The good news is we're now in our late 40s and our 50s. People talk about, well, it was cheap back in the day. Yeah, but in 1980, I had an allowance of like $2 a week.
Right.
Now I have more money, and so I can afford it. eBay is a wonderful source. There is places like there are online sources.
Drive-through RPG, I know.
Thank you, Drive-through RPG, right, where you can get a download of a lot of PDFs. And a lot of these older adventures are available. And the great news about it, a lot of them you can pick them up pretty cheaply on eBay.
Okay. Well, that's something you got to try out. So, kind of wrapping up for this session, part of the reason we're doing this podcast is to promote GROGTALK, which is coming up in October, right? It's the 11th through the 13th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's right. So 11th through the 13th. So GROGTALK is going to be part of Crucible 8, which is a convention that's done in October. So we're going to have a large room for old school gaming, basically anything pre-1985. So we're looking for folks who are interested in playing. We're looking for folks who want to submit games that they want to be either playing in, and we're also obviously looking for folks who want to run games. So if you're a Traveler fan, Top Secret, give us a list of things. So if you could go to info@grogcon.com and give us your email so we can put you on the mailing list so you get more information. If you want to run a game, we'll obviously give you some consideration on the cost. We would love to talk to you about what kind of game you want to run. We're having next month a meeting with the Crucible folks, and we'll have more information over the next few weeks. But there's going to be Friday games, Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday. And so we're looking for folks who want to run. It's kind of like if we know what games are running, that will attract people to play. So I know Dan and I are running. A couple of our friends are going to DM. But we certainly want people from all over, if they're willing to come down to the Orlando, Florida area to do this, would be great. We got our first review, Dan, on iTunes. We're official.
We have a review. Is it from you?
No, it's
you
not.
Do the review. Your son, a wife.
That's right. Well, I'm not sure. It's Jordan 1234789. So
I'm nervous. What is it? Is it bad?
It's 5-star. No, I learned a lot about first edition gameplay. Jordan 1234789. I think it's super interesting hearing about how they played when it first came out. We'd love to hear more personal D&D stories from back in the day. So that's why we added this word of recall thing to remember where we are in the past.
How do people even find it?
Well, if you go to iTunes and you type Dungeons and Dragons or, in our case, GROGTALK, it will be the podcast that you find. And over the next week or so, we'll be adding this to Google and a number of the other podcast aggregators as well. You can also, if you want to go directly to our website, GROGCON, grogcon.com/podcast, you can actually see all the podcasts that we have.
I'm thrilled someone's actually listening. I actually just enjoy coming and talking, and if no one listened, I get a kick out of just doing GROGTALK.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're having a great time with this, but and I think as people hear this, we're gonna definitely do some episodes about the type of other games that we're planning to play at GROGCON. So that's why we need the feedback from you all when what kind of games you're gonna run. So I also wanted to mention we had a guest player at your session, right, Mike?
Yes.
Do you remember Mike's last name? I don't recall.
Oh, I don't recall. I think it's Holcomb.
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 You're never sure on the meetup if that's their last name or not, but it's Mike Holcomb.
I'm Dan Gormansky.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
I swear.
Exactly. And I'm just James. I don't have a last name. I couldn't afford one.
He couldn't even afford a fake last name.
Yeah. So he came and we started talking about GROGTALK. He's like, oh, well, we do a convention. He's from Wisconsin, and he leads the Chippewa Valley Geek convention, and his website is ChippewaValleyGeek.com, where they have a podcast both of actual play and they talk about the conventions. And their convention is the Clearwater Con. It's in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Is that?
I think it's believed Eau Claire.
Eau Claire,
is how it's pronounced. Eau Claire, I
That's
believe.
right, and that's June 28th through the 30th. It's called Clearwater Con. You can go to Tabletop Events, and if you're in the Wisconsin area, I'm sure he had a great time based on his feedback. And
that's what he told us to our face,
right.
anyway.
We'll see the review on Meetup.
Right. I mean, I have students who they'll tell me, "I loved your class," and then I get a terrible eval.
That's right. Rate my professor 0. Can I give less than 1 star?
Right.
Can
so
I give anti-stars?
Right. So.
But his meetup.com/CV-RPG. I'm sure if you're in that part of the Midwest and you want to play, basically he was in town. He looked up Meetup to see if playing D&D, and he saw our game. He showed up, and I think that's what's really so fascinating about this time frame. That it was always a challenge to find people to play or a number of people. Now you don't have that situation. You can be in any city. You look up Meetup or social media, and you can find a game with that. So please review and subscribe on iTunes. Again, there'll be other platforms. We're going to set up. We have a Facebook homepage, which we're going to work on. We're going to have Twitter, and in the future, we're going to set up a YouTube channel. We are actually videotaping this shenanigans and tomfoolery, and we'll probably start doing live feeds of this so people can see it as well if you want to participate and make this more interactive. And probably in the future, we'll do a Patreon, because just from the fact that Dan and I are working on some modules for our tournament, which we have here in Florida in June. We'll talk about that. And we would be also willing to run a game for folks. So until next time, I'm James.
And I'm Dan.
Thanks for listening to GROGTALK. Have a great week.